As I indicated, we very quickly recognized that had not planned enough space. Growth in the medical business was, to say the least, sort of overwhelming for us. And by the end of the year 1976, we were well along on completing an additional 20,000 square foot addition onto the north side of what later became Plant 1, or the Yalla building of Mid-State Plastics. We still had the custom business in the back of the original 20,000 square feet in the rear 50% of it. We very quickly made plans to build a second clean room adjacent to the one that we had. And we did that, then incorporated into it everything that we had learned in building the first clean room. We began to add machines there and size them to the business that we saw coming from Abbott Labs. And I remember at the accounting audit, the end of the year audit, which was at that time was September the 30th, we actually had 3 machines sitting on the floor ready to move into clean room number 2. And we got into a little dispute with the accountants about whether or not they were qualified for a tax credit, which you got for new machinery at that particular time. The tax law had a provision for getting a bonus tax deduction at the beginning when you bought new equipment, called a capital credits type of thing. But anyway, we moved along and got the machines into clean room number 2, and we're up and running. That very quickly filled up most of the warehouse space that we had made available by building the addition onto the building. We had to start thinking about a second building, and the idea was that we would separate the medical and the custom into 2 different buildings. And in by 1978, as I recall, we had broke ground for what we call plant number 2, or the blue building, built basically the same size building and added the warehouse onto it almost immediately. And I believe in the case of plant number 2, Buford and I were partners in that building, and later on we sold that to the company. I cannot recall all of the history of moving buildings, ownerships back and forth. One time the company bought the building from DeBrule, and then we bought the building from Buford myself, so that ultimately Mid-State owned all 3 buildings and at the Seagrove location. So we were growing very rapidly. We were fortunate that labor was available. Thanks to Lib Cox, we had worked out what we called a split shift schedule, so that high school students could work for us on second shift, with the 2 of them splitting the shift into 2 4-hour segments. If one of them had a test the next day and had a need for it, switch off and work an 8-hour shift, so that the partner did not have to work at all that night and could prepare for the test. That was an innovation that allowed us to hire a lot of high school students, and at that time the law allowed anyone over 16 to work in molding. Today that's not true. You have to be 18, I believe, to be legally employed. But that was a situation that worked out pretty well. We had, by that time, accumulated a pretty good staff on the first shift of adults who, after working there a while, had gained experience and continued to gain experience, and some of them became key people as we moved forward. On second shifts, we had as I said, a number of students, but we also had a mix of adults with some experience on second shift, and third shift was mostly consisted of adults. So our base team was beginning to really solidify, and the results showed that.